going good. Honestly, it is an honor to be able to talk to you and interview you.
Nice, nice.
On the behalf of me and all my elementary school, you are a legendary children's book author, uh,
Thank you. Thanks so much.
and it really is an honor.
Awesome.
So one of my first questions that I want to ask you is, how did you first get involved with the 39 Clues series?
So none of us created the series, right?
Mhm.
It was sort of Scholastic
Oh.
that developed the idea.
Mhm.
And as I always sort of say when kids ask me about it, Scholastic sort of approached us to
Mhm.
kind of execute their vision of it. So
Mhm.
Rick Riordan, obviously of Percy Jackson fame,
Mhm.
was the first author they contacted, and then the second group were sort of the original four, right?
Mhm.
Myself, Peter Larangis,
Jude
and Jude
Watson.
Watson. But Rick, obviously at the time Percy Jackson was hitting really big,
Yeah.
and the three of us were all people who had a lot of experience doing kind of series books for Scholastic.
So basically, Scholastic came up to you and the three others, knowing that you had good experience with children book series.
Yeah, and the other thing about it was, the kids' book business is not like super high stakes. You don't get
Hmm.
a lot of, like corporate espionage or, sneaking around back borders. But this was the first thing. It's like, we have a highly secret. It sounded a lot like the 39 Clues itself,
Hmm.
sneaking around the Janus
You might
stronghold.
get Penguin Publishing coming in trying to steal all the secrets.
Exactly. So this was the first time that they told us they had this project in mind, but we weren't allowed to know about it.
Hmm.
Um, they made us sign like non-disclosure agreements before they would tell us about the series.
Hmm.
It was very much in keeping with like the character that we of the series that we were helping to create. So it was just the way the series kind of keeps readers just a teeny bit off guard.
Hmm.
I think that Scholastic kind of kept us just a teeny bit off guard when in the way that we were brought into the project itself.
How are the big plot points determined? How much input did you have in your respective books?
Well, in our respective books, it was 100%,
Hmm.
but the main arc of the story was developed um, by I believe the editorial team and Rick, because he was sort of involved first. So when I got One False Note, for example,
Hmm.
I knew uh, I knew Mozart, you
Hmm.
know, and I knew where the Maze of Bones ended.
Hmm.
I read that first draft, and the rest of it was up to me. I mean, I was sort of restricted by the things that could reasonably have applied to Mozart and his life. And to be honest, I was kind of as a kid's book writer, when I heard Mozart, I was like, what guy sitting there in fifth grade is going to be like, oh, Mozart, awesome, give me Vin Diesel or something like that. The more research I did on Mozart, the more fascinated I was by this guy who was,
Hmm.
he was sort of obviously a great genius and great musician and composer, but also, he was sort of a weirdo a little bit, right? Like he loved, like fart jokes and he probably had some kind of a spectrumy kind of special capability.
Hmm.
He was kind of like a high functioning, perhaps like many people believe, like he had Asperger's syndrome or
Hmm.
something like that. Just absolutely cool. The other thing perfect about Mozart for my story was Mozart had a sister, and a lot of people believe
Hmm.
that Mozart's sister was every bit as gifted as he was. We never heard about her because, was the 1700s. What choice did women have to
Yeah.
really kind of shine in the same way as men? But I'm writing a series that focuses on a brother and sister. So I had this unique opportunity to write about Amy and Dan Cahill, looking back at their sort of distant cousins, the Mozart siblings, and maybe seeing a little bit of themselves.
So you were able to choose Mozart, or did Riordan basically give you Mozart in order to work with?
I think I'm trying to remember. Mozart was one. I know that they had the people chosen, right? The main focus of each, like the Cahill from each, and I think Mozart might have been already chosen for book 2. I know when I came back in the series and wrote the 8th book, I think that we almost had one of those meetings where we could sort of divvy up like the last 3 or 4 people and decide who we wanted, you know, like, so Peter got Shaka Zulu for 7 and I took Hu Yi for 8. Like, there were things that we were that we it kind of got more loosey-goosey as the series went on, but back at the beginning I think they pretty much had the sequence of which Cahill was which book.
In terms of characters that you were able to have a say over, I want to ask about Fidelio Rako, because even when I was going back through the book and recording my video on it, I still had to look up to see if he was an actual person or not.
Right, and you'd be amazed at how much time we actually spent discussing actually that point, right? Because so many of the people referenced in 39 Clues books were actual historical figures, that if you're going to throw someone out there who is made up, you know, it's definitely something. It's not that you can't do it, it's a big decision that you that you need to sort of, you know, kind of clear with the 39 Clues overlords in the Scholastic offices, right? So, you know, I think that I had this great sense of you know, Mozart's connection to the story of the 39 Clues, right? Because a lot of people, like, Mozart died broke. I think it's one of the most fascinating things about him. The greatest composer of history is buried, no one knows where, in this pauper's grave, because in those days, if you didn't have any money, you know, you would just sort of dig a hole. They would dig a hole in the ground, and a bunch of people would kind of get plowed under there. So why was he broke? And of course, what fit into our storyline was he became obsessed as a Cahill with the search for the 39 Clues, and he basically poured all his resources into that, and that's why he died a pauper. But Fidelio Rako was sort of his connection to that whole sort of arc of the clue hunt, and, you know, him as sort of, at the time, one of the more prominent members of the Janus branch, searching for the hunt for the 39 Clues, because even back then the family was split into those branches, and each branch was sort of competing to recreate Gideon Cahill's secret formula.
And honestly, that Fidelio Rako is one of the reasons that I love the Wamfault's Notes so much, because it's such a good example of great historical fiction, of having history of Mozart, but then adding in the fiction of Fidelio Rako, but having it so convincing that you're able to tie in, oh, Mozart did die broke, but here's the slight fictional element of he was connected to the 39 Clues, and here was his way of getting into it, and go between him and Franklin, and it again, very, very good.
You know, you're always sort of walking that line when you're talking about a mixture of real life and you know, and fiction, to sort of figure out what's going to make sense and what's going to mislead, and you know, what's good historical fiction versus bad history. Let's say, you know, we did a lot of that with 39 Clues, and that was one of the reasons why we had like an editorial team at Scholastic who really, really believed in our story, and they were, I mean, we as creators were down the rabbit hole. those guys were way down the rabbit hole. I mean, they were completely living this Cahill reality. And so when we had a question, I think our sort of our overlord editor, David Levithan, who is like the editor-in-chief of Scholastic and probably one of the main architects of 39 Clues, he used to describe it as that those people at Scholastic were our air traffic controllers, right? Like, you got like a bunch of planes like circling the airport. Nobody lets the pilots discuss who's going to land first, right? They call the tower, and he kind of directs them in. So that editorial team really were our air traffic controllers.
Moving on to the Emperor's Code, how did you? You're talking about the editorial team. What was the process of researching Puyi and the Qing dynasty between you and the editors?
Well, I mean, we kind of took the lead on the research, because there was so much to research that you couldn't just do it. You couldn't just dive in and do it all. So we kind of chose the things that interested us, and sometimes it was literally just about like choosing what we thought was going to be cool, because there's a million things to sort of say about any of these characters in history. Maybe it's because I grew up in the 70s and there was this show called Kung Fu about martial arts, and it sort of had a connection to the Shaolin Temple. So I was like, we gotta do the Shaolin Temple.
We gotta have monks.
Or I gotta do the Terracotta Warriors, or certain things, the Great Wall, like certain things that it's just like, it's just, as a reader, like many guy readers as a kid, I would read a book and I would immediately sort of subdivide the book into sort of the story and then like the cool parts, When I approached the 39 Clues book, I would look at the research in terms of, what of this research is going to be the cool parts, And one thing about the Emperor's Code that was an add-on for me was doing the climax on Mount Everest. And I think the source of that was I had done an adventure series about an expedition to break the record for the youngest climber in history to summit Everest. And I really just thought it was one of the most amazing, fascinating, like immersive topics ever. So I kind of threw that in there out of nowhere. I mean, of course I had to, clear it with the overlord, but we were, one of the things that was fun about 39 Clues was, even though we were writing sort of on an arc that was kind of created for us, they really let us be ourselves as writers. It is one of the most fascinating experiences that I've ever had as a creator of fiction. It was tricky at times, right? Because you're writing a book in a series, you didn't write the one that came before it, and you're not going to be writing the one that goes after it. But it was just a blast.
What gave you the idea to split up Dan and Amy for the 8th book?
Oh, so I've been writing a really long time, and I had done a bunch of adventure series, and one of my favorites was a series called On the Run, which was the series that started with the book Chasing the Falconers, like not Amy and Dan Cahill. They were Aidan and Meg Falconer, right? The Falconers. And I had a lot of experience. It's nothing like the 39 Clues, right? It's pretty much sort of a very realistic fiction series about sort of a almost like The Fugitive for kids, right? A brother and sister who are sort of wanted by the FBI. But one of the most, I feel like I explored every possible problem that kids as fugitives could have, and Amy and Dan fit into that in 39 Clues, just because so often they were being pursued by the other families or whatever. And my favorite experience writing in the Falconers series had come in the book where they ended up being separated and basically spent the entire book trying to get back together again. And I knew that at some point in 39 Clues, there would be a great opportunity to do that with Amy and Dan.
In both of your books, in the original Clue Hunt arc, you had the character of Jonah Wizard, who in my opinion started out to be one of the weaker, more one-dimensional characters, but you gave him life. What was the process of fleshing out his character?
I don't know that I don't know that it's a process of fleshing out. I think it's just loving him. So we all sort of had the characters we liked the best, and the ones I know Peter loved writing about Uncle Alistair. And Uncle Alistair sort of never did it for me as much. I mean, he was fine, but I didn't really find much creatively to do with him. And I know early on in the series, Jude Watson has like a dark side to her, and she just loved Irina Spassky, right? Like the Russian spy lady, and I think that was just because she was always kind of probing the darkness of 39 Clues. And for me, I just for some reason always loved Jonah Wizard. He always struck me as someone of a lot of possibilities. And so I thought of a big role because he was really involved in the incident, just like Amy and Dan's separation, right? In the Emperor's Code, and I think that I sort of thought of a really nice way to have him involved in the story, and again, my Cahill overlords, my editor sort of made a point saying, it's like, okay, this is great what you've done with Jonah, but remember, I'm the editor of the whole series. Don't worry about what happens. You don't need to worry about what happens in the next book. So if you have this great kumbaya moment where Jonah Wizard, comes over to the light side and just like makes friends with everybody, well, we need him as a bad guy going forward. I think that keeping him, like still keeping the story where he sort of showed that multidimensionality and depth, but at the same time keeping him as a dangerous adversary in the Clue Hunt, I think he's probably the combination of those two things is what made him sort of a nicely nuanced, fleshed out character in the Emperor's Code. So I always take credit for half of it.
You did a great job with your part of not dealing with, but loving Jonah Wizard. And I guess to start to wrap things up, you wrote four books and part of, I want to say, the Vespers Rising book, which was like the short stories for the 39 Clues. What was your favorite one to write?
I think they were all kind of fun in their own way. It might have been the best experience working on the Medusa plot, right? Because I never had the chance to go first, with the Clue Hunt, right? And Rick did an amazing job, and he's pretty much a legend these days. So so we don't argue about that. But it was always in the back of my mind that I never had a chance to start a 39 Clues series, and that was sort of my chance to do that, and I sort of felt like it's a great opportunity, but it's also a lot of heavy lifting, right? Because there was Vespers Rising, but we really knew there was really no Vespers, in the original sort of series idea for the 39 Clues or in the original Clue Hunt series. So it was a tricky book to write because I'm all about like anti-boring, and I don't, so I've got all this sort of backstory that I need to include, but I don't want to sort of slow down the story by suddenly, you know, we're in the middle of everything, and then we hear, you know, for the next 14 pages, the entire history of the Vespers. So, so I sort of looked at it as a challenge, and difficult, but definitely a fun book to write.
What was your, because you've written almost 100 books at this point.
Yeah.
What is your favorite book that you've ever written?
You know, I honestly don't have a favorite. Like, I tend to get the most excited about what's newest. You know, War Stories is my newest. Notorious.
War Stories is so great, and I'll have to send you a copy, Jay.
Oh.
Oh, cool! Yeah, absolutely. And you got to send me my copies, Elizabeth, because they haven't come yet.
They haven't. Well, that is a David Levithan. I will.
Yeah.
You haven't gotten anything. I'll flag it. No, we've been cutting back our warehouse orders due to staffing cutbacks, but we will definitely get those to you. You haven't gotten any. Oh, Lord. Okay.
I have arcs.
But you didn't have anything finished, right?
I don't have the finished book.
Okay.
Don't worry. It's not a big deal. I was just
no, you deserve to see finished books.
So what I'm saying is, that doesn't mean that, you know, War Stories is better than all the others. It's the one that's kind of the most current in my own life. So I always tend to be really psyched about what's newest.
And to finish things off, I have a sister who's extremely passionate about writing and wants to be an author herself. Do you have any tips for aspiring authors?
So, I mean, we all have different styles, you know, but I would say, make writing a part of your life. Make it something that you do every day, or, you know, almost every day. And it doesn't even really matter what kind of writing you're doing. I mean, you could just blog, or you could, you know, keep a journal or a diary, or I do none of those things. I'm just always working on a story, a book, something like that. It's just, you don't want it to be something that you do once in a blue moon. It should be something that that is a regular part of your life, you know. And I think, you know, who's the worst at it is adults, you know. And I'll travel a lot, and, you know, and I'll be, you know, meeting like a principal at a school. He's like, "Oh, you're a writer. I'm gonna write a book one day." And he starts talking about, you know, based on my experience, you know, growing up summers on the shore of Lake Michigan, you know, and he gives me this whole totally fleshed out thing, and it's like, great, you know, where are you right now? Ooh, haven't started one day. That's what you can't, you know, there's never going to be that magic aha moment where the sky opens up and the message is, you must start writing this today, right? One of my favorite quotes, and you would think I actually know the exact wording, but I don't. It's attributed to Einstein, but he said something like, excellence is not an achievement, it's a habit, right? And I think you get good at writing by doing a lot of it.
So essentially everyone has a story to tell. It's just a matter of sitting down and doing it.
Yeah.
Okay. I know that you have to go soon, so thank you so much for letting me interview you. Thank you, Elizabeth, for setting up this meeting. Honestly, this has been amazing. I never would have dreamed of being able to interview you, so thank you so much.
Well, this is awesome. Good luck with the rest of your series. I'm going to follow it on YouTube. Remember, the clue hunt never ends, so yeah. We're thrilled to see you keeping it alive. Just one question for you: what branch are you?
When I first did the clue hunt, when the website was still up, because now it's been transferred to, I want to say, like Hangout or the home base. The home base, yes. When I first did it, I was Janice. So when I did it a second time, I was ECAT, but just deep down, I'm gonna be Janice with Jonah.
Okay, yeah. Well, I've always been Janice, but I always sort of wished that I could be ECAT for like when the Wi-Fi in my house goes down, because I sort of feel like the ECATs are able to rig it so that the Wi-Fi never goes down in their house. But you know, Janice through and through.
Yeah, Janice. And it's honestly been incredible, the response to the video. I even got someone reaching out saying that, hey, I got access to the old subreddit and we're trying to restart interest in the 39 Clues series. So it's been amazing being able to see this and seeing the passion that people have for this series and how much it means to them.
Well, you know, so my I have 3 kids, and my oldest is 21. He's a senior in college, and he was, I believe, in the 4th grade when, you know, the like Maze of Bones, One False Note, Sword Thief, like the very first kind of wave of 39 Clues books came out, and it was really the first time for me that my own kids were sort of the age to be fascinated in the stuff I was writing in real time, like right when it was coming out. And it was and it's too bad it was 39 Clues almost, because he was always asking me these questions that I wasn't allowed to tell him. You know? So he was particularly fascinated by who the Man in Black was, you know, and so we'd be sitting down having dinner and be like, Dad, I think the Man in Black might be, and he'd like sort of spin out this theory. And it'd be like, you know, any other project I've been associated with, I could totally be on base with this. Not this one, you know. I always thought about that non-disclosure agreement kind of hanging up.
If you tell your son, he's gonna leak it to TMZ, and who knows, it's just gonna be leaked to the press, and it's gonna be a whole mess.
Yeah, you know, well, he probably wouldn't have leaked it to TMZ, but you know, the other 4th graders in his class have connections.
So I know you have to go, so thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for letting me interview you. This has been amazing.
Awesome. Okay, and thanks for doing this. I'll continue to follow your series.
Thank you. But I will definitely check out your new book, War Stories, and again, thank you so much for letting me interview you.
Great meeting you.
Great meeting you too.
Bye.
Bye.